Greetings, fellow inquirers. Margot and I have been talking at various points during the week and noting how strands of inquiry have been intersecting to form the warp and the weft of the proceedings. I've had a parallel week out here in the Antipodes, dislocated from the convivial atmosphere of the Sparrow Farm, but not without its points of connection. So, as my final contribution this week, here are 7 reflections on those nodes of connection. As several people noted in their proposals and presentations, fast forwarding also implies we pay attention to the space between the present and the future. Rebecca put this quite nicely in her proposal. Quote, "The phrase fast forward implies both rapid acceleration and an abrupt stop, but also has an element of in-between time. The time from pressing the button to hitting pause seems ephemeral and somehow gets lost." End quote. So, if this in-between time is a series of now moments, and if we really should think of the universe, as the physicist Brian Greene tells us, as slices of now space-time piled up next to each other, then now is a very expansive concept indeed. So, all the now moments between pressing the button and hitting pause seem to present an opportunity for discovery. What can we do with them? I gather that one of the prevailing themes of the week has been about the nowness of the materials we choose to work with. The most obvious one, thanks to Charles, would be bread dough, which has to be worked in its state of nowness or the moment is lost, the bread is spoiled. This is a good point to bring up the anthropologist Tim Ingold, who has argued that making an artifact and growing an organism are not so distinct after all. We imagine that when we design, we first conceive of the artifact and then produce it. We impose an ideal on nature. But Ingold uses the example of a beehive and a woven basket to point out that here are artifacts that emerge from a dialogic exchange between the material, its needs to go this way or that way, and the makers. More specifically, the woven basket does not have a surface that's altered by the designs of the maker. In the process of weaving, the surface is not so much transformed as built up. Its form is the result of a pattern of skilled movement and the play of tensile forces. I quote, "The weaver is caught up in a reciprocal and quite muscular dialogue with the material." So, as this muscular dialogue is translated into regular form through rhythmic repetition, the rhythms of time are translated into space. One of the great things about design inquiry is how it provides opportunities for reflection, not just in conversation or photographing the sunrise, sunset, midnight, or in proprioceptive writing, but in those magical afternoons in the barn when those expanded moments of making happen, of translating time into space. It's interesting how, to pick up on Patricio's contribution, that when Hertzian space is depopulated, i.e. on the island, when the cell phone towers are suddenly diminished and wireless signals vanish before our eyes, we gain an opportunity to reflect on how the things that designers have designed, cell phones, phone apps, tweets, messaging systems, have such an effect on how we live and how we conceive of time. Sinking blissfully into island time with its emphasis on the face-to-face, you realize how difficult it is to resist these colonizations of time and Hertzian space that shape our other lives. I had one design inquiry moment of reflection this week when a Finnish doctoral student on a research fellowship in Brisbane tested on me his toolkit for fostering self-reflection in design teachers. The toolkit took the form of a blank grid with 3 columns across the top, marked past, present and future, and then 4 rows marked goals and interests, barriers and conflicts, strategies and tools, and values and drivers. It was interesting for me to see how often design inquiry came up. First, as a past influence on my teaching, with its constructivist method of inquiry being a purposeful departure from traditional design conferences, those show and tell, sage on the stage type things. Secondly, design inquiry came up because it is a purposely cross-disciplinary and extra-disciplinary organization, one that questions the conventional boundaries of design discourse, which always seem so arbitrary anyway. But design inquiry came up again when I got to the values and drivers. I realized that three things I really value, and which tie teaching together with other activities like playing music, are performing, collaborating, and playing. Whereas I'd always thought of those three as byproducts of other drivers like career, money, or fame, now I see that they are primary drivers, actually more important to me than the other ones and the end results. Because all three of those, performing, collaborating, and playing, establish possibilities for camaraderie. And by camaraderie, I don't mean that in the superficial, or just in the superficial, having a good time sense, but in the sense of comradeship, the joy of connecting, trading, discovering ideas with a mutual sense of purpose or cause. It's been a really interesting experiment for me to reflect on how design inquiry culture has not only changed me in the past, but how it is possible to drink a little of that culture without actually being at the event, on the island. And perhaps that's the last point. How to effectively distill and disseminate the revelations of this particular inquiry, fast forward, so that what we've learned can influence the larger discourse of design. I'll leave that with you. Thank you.